Hey guys, welcome to my Deck Tech, and today we're going to be talking about Obeka. Who's Obeka and why should you care? Obeka's a cool commander. She's a 3/4 for Grixis and 1 legendary creature, Ogre Wizard, with a text that says tap the player whose turn it is may end the turn. This is a pretty weird effect, but we can do a bunch of jank stuff and really cool effects. You should play Obeka if you like an all or nothing glass cannon playstyle with emphasis on the cannon and the glass. If you like thinking through complex lines on the spot, it allows you to flex your game knowledge. You play an Ogre Wizard that punches through time, also dodges the Brazen Bolts, but Ogre Wizard, and you can take a bunch of extra turns and cheat out large creatures and have an army of large creatures. But let's talk about why Obeka's so cool and what we can actually do with Obeka. So, to start, Obeka. What does she actually do? So she can tap the player whose turn it is may end the turn. You exile all spells and abilities from the stack. The player whose turn it is discards down to hand size, damage wears off, and this turn and until end of turn effects end. So the main way that Obeka abuses this effect is with cards like Hellkite Courser. When it enters, you put your commander from the command zone onto the battlefield, it gains haste, and then your commander goes back to the command zone at the beginning of the next end step. What we're looking at is that text right there at the beginning of the next end step. So what you do is whenever you go to the end step, this ability will trigger. We will then tap Obeka, and when Obeka is tapped, it's going to exile that trigger. In Hellkite Courser's case, we basically just get our commander on the board for free and can tap and can use her effect. It's pretty cool. But what doesn't work with her are treason effects. Note how it just says until end of turn. That wears off. That doesn't have a trigger associated with it. That goes away at the cleanup step at the end of the turn. So you don't get to keep your opponent's cards with treason effects. But you have to watch out, because Final Fortune says you lose the game at the end of that turn. But actually, it was errata. At the beginning of that turn's end step, you lose the game. So you also have to keep in mind erratas when it comes to old cards, and just make sure to read Oracle text, always, forever. So the three main ways that we use Obeka is through cheating, tokens, and reanimation. These are the three pillars of an Obeka deck, and that's what we're mainly going to be doing. So to start, we get creatures into play by cheating them out. We do this with Ilharg, Hellkite Courser, Sneak Attacks, just cards that let us play stuff from our hand from command zone for free and dodge mana costs. The benefits is that they require the least setup out of all of our strategies, but the problem is that without Obeka on board, a lot of them are bad, and in the case of Sneak Attack, which isn't bad without Obeka, you run out of cards fast, so you need to refill your hand quite often. After we get those cards on the board, we're then going to duplicate them with tokens generators like Kiki-Jiki, Flame Rush Rider, and Mirror March. Now here you're saying, those aren't token generators, you say. That's not a who cares, doesn't even matter. Those aren't 1/1 token soldiers. You're right, they're better. They're copies of our Dreadmaws. So Red has the token mechanic of making a temporary token with haste and then you exile it at the end step. We abuse the hell out of this because we keep the token, and these cards were not made to do that. So we get 2 mana Archon of Despairs, which is cool. They snowball really fast in the terms of Flame Rush Rider. If you get a copy of Flame Rush Rider, it can copy Flame Rush Rider, or Kiki-Jiki just giving you free creatures every single turn. They can also set up massive combo plays. Even without Obeka, you can double up on strong stuff like ETBs, and it doesn't get absolutely blown out of the water without Obeka. The cards are still decent without her, but the cards themselves usually do nothing on their own. Kiki-Jiki is dead in the water as a 5 mana 2/2 if it's alone on the board, although you can do so many combos with Kiki-Jiki it doesn't really matter. But Mirror March never feels good to play until you get 12 copies off of it, but is fun. Run Mirror March. It's like a quarter. But going all in on tokens means that you're going to be susceptible to what? Board wipes. Yeah, if somebody hits you with a Cyclonic Rift, it's gonna be sucky. Pl- it's just what it is. We're playing a board-based strategy, and so that's why our third pillar is reanimation. Using cards like Dawn of the Dead, Delver, and Footsteps of the Goryo, we can return our dead creatures from the grave back to the board. This is our setup and our fallback for whenever our boards get wiped, and if you want to go harder into reanimation, you can. It's not super rare that people just cut cheating entirely in favor of a full reanimation strategy. I'm not a big fan of that game plan, so I mainly play a show and tell style deck instead. Uh, the good ones are reliant on Obeka. There's your generic stuff like Reanimate, but Footsteps of the Goryo and Dawn of the Dead in particular are heavily reliant on Obeka. Like all reanimation strategies, Grave Hate's a pain, and it still requires setup. No matter what with Obeka, you're going to require some setup of some form, and that's just the breaks. There's not much you can do about it. So in addition, to dodge our negative end of turn effects, we have Sundial of the Infinite, which is just Obeka, but on an artifact. Discontinuity is a 2 mana in the turn spell, but it can also be cast as a 6 mana instant as a counter spell. Or, more funnily, if you can do it at your opponent's upkeep and just make them really angry at you. It's fun. Do it. Make everyone hate you. Tail's End is also useful for way too many reasons. Activated ability. Triggered ability is what all of our effects are. Legendary spells can counter commanders for whenever someone's playing their 8 mana commander and you just want to say, no, I don't want Toxrill to hit the board. That sounds miserable. But we can do it in different ways too. If you want to just dodge the sacrifice effect on tokens entirely, we can use Industrial Advancement because of the red mana the tokens created by red cards do keep their mana cost since they're copies, which means you can sacrifice the creature and get out bigger creatures for cheap. Proteus Staff allows you to also tuck those tokens, and it can be used as spot removal for opponent's stuff too. Mimic Vat turns off all sacrifice effects. It's brutal. Aristocrats will hate you. It's amazing. I love it. It just shuts down recursion. And then if someone ever tries to kill a big threat like their, I don't know, Emrakul, which is a banned card, but don't worry about that. If someone ever tries to loop an Emrakul for some reason, you can just tuck it under Mimic Vat, and now you have an Emrakul, and that's pretty fun. So, but Obeka, the spice. Not only can Obeka end the turn, she can take extra turns. Go away. Yeah, get. We don't want you here. I'm showing them how to play show and tell, not that. Warrior's Oath, Final Fortune, Alchemist's Gambit, there are a couple other ones, but Time Walk is banned. These cards are literally just Time Walk. You should be running all of these. And by that I mean Final Fortune you should always be running. Warrior's Oath is good, and the rest are up to taste, because Last Chance is a $20 card, and Alchemist's Gambit costs 3 mana and exiles itself, so you can't go infinite. It's sad. I always run Final Fortune and Warrior's Oath because 2 extra turn spells seems to be a pretty good number, as if you don't have Obeka, you can't play these cards most of the time, or you better be confident. You can also just lose the game if you go Final Fortune and then someone pass your Obeka. Now you just lose the game. But it's worth it, because Time Walk is broken. Anyway, some cool lands to run with Obeka. We've got bounce lands. If you're going for a reanimation strategy, a bounce land on 2 makes you 8 cards on turn 2, so you can discard a big creature to reanimate. They also tap for 2 mana, which is useful later, and the ETB can be exiled with Obeka. It's cute. I like it. It's fun. There's some synergy. You could cut them for basics, but I won't. Lotus Field, Hexproof, ETB's tapped, ETB sack 2 lands. Lotus Field is literally ramp on a land, and I love it. It's really fun to be able to just Lotus Field in the turn. I just played a land that can tap for 3 mana. And Lotus Veil has the same thing as Lotus Field, wrong. This is why you check the erratas. Lotus Veil is actually a replacement effect to bury, to sacrifice 2 other untapped lands. It's a replacement effect, not a triggered ability though. So you can't actually hit it with Obeka. Don't run Lotus Veil. It doesn't work. And some extra lands. We've got Riptide Laboratory and Hanware Battlements. I like both of these. Riptide helps Obeka dodge removal and is generally useful at random points. It's not amazing, but it's a land. It's pretty low opportunity cost. Hanware Battlements gives creatures haste, which, can be useful, as people would imagine. It's haste. Run it. More people should run this card. Why does no one play Hanware Battlements? Haste is good, guys. Haste is good. So we've got some cool removal pieces too. We run Identity Thief, which just allows you to exile a creature from your opponent's board every turn. Platecrafter allows you to start copying it. When you start getting those Kiki Jiki and Flame Rush Riders down, Platecrafter is really nice to copy because you can just make a bunch of tokens of it, sack your copy of Platecrafter, and everyone's boards just get wiped. Amphin Mutineer also hits non-salamander to creatures. Never comes up. Don't think I've ever had Amphin Mutineer where I was like, man, if only that opponent's creature wasn't a salamander. Doesn't happen. Whatever you're pitting, it's going to be better for them to have the 4/3 Salamander Warrior than for them to have whatever you were exiling. Also, it has Encore, so it reanimates itself, which allows you to make 3 of them, and then blow up 3 things, and keep them at the end of your turn because of that triggered ability with Obeka. Encore is really good in Obeka. Amphin Mutineer is the only good Encore card for Obeka, though. The other ones are pretty, you can do better. We've got some cool draw spells in Obeka. Ideas Unbound is a 2 mana draw 3. You don't discard the 3 cards because it's been errated. Check the erratas. To say at the beginning of the instep, discard 3 cards. We've got Dragon Mage. Wheels, wheels, wheels. Wheels are important, except Jace's Archivist is better. So with Show and Tell, you end up cheating out your hand pretty fast, and then you have no cards in hand, which makes all of your cheating cards dead. So for this, you need to wheel. Why wheel? Well, aside from all of the good reasons to wheel your opponent's hand, it refills your hand, and that's it. That's why I'm running them. And it fills your graveyard for reanimation. There's a bunch of reasons to run them that are tactically advantageous, like wheeling your opponent's combo pieces. I don't care about that. I need a new hand, and I need to dump my current hand. For this, I love Jace's Archivist, especially in this deck, because making a copy of Jace's Archivist allows you to make so many wheels. It's hilarious. Make hasted copies of the Archivist, pay like 3 blue, wheel everyone's hands 3 times. Brilliant. Hilarious. And Psychic Vortex is another form of our draw. But Psychic Vortex is weird. Cumulative upkeep, draw a card. Whack. The cost to keep this card is to draw a card. It's pretty slow at first. On the first turn, it doesn't do anything when you play it, and then it goes around the table and you draw 1 card, and then you draw 2. But if you can get to your second turn with Psychic Vortex on the table, it's already drawn 3 cards for 4 mana, which is pretty worth it. And after that, it's just gravy. The end step, sacking a land and discarding your hand, absolutely horrible downside. Doesn't even matter, though, if you have Obeka, and most of the time it's worth just ditching your entire hand to keep Vortex on the table. The draw is just that good. So we've got some counter magic. Our first spell is Counter Lash. Counter a spell, lets you cheat a card into play. I don't run Counterlash. It requires you to have the same card type as your opponent, and it's 6 mana. At that point, you could just play the spell in the first play. Plus, you've kind of got to wait till something's worth hitting. I'm not a big fan, but it could be gimmicky and fun. Spiketail Drake. A card you probably don't know exists. Why would I be running a 5 mana 3/3 flyer? Because you can sack it to mana leak a card. Why would I ever want that? Because making copies of Spiketail Drake, if you have Kiki Jiki and Spiketail Drake on the field, or Jaxis and Spiketail Drake, everyone at the table is playing a game of chicken, and it is so fun to watch. Everyone try and bait out Spiketail Drake. It effectively says spells your opponent's cast cost 3 more mana. It doesn't seem that good, and if your opponents just decide to play through it, it's a lot worse, but it's more of a mental game because no one wants to be the one that gets their expensive spell countered, so everyone's just going to play chicken with the other players. And then if they don't play something you don't mind, it is a 3/3 flyer that you can just keep beating them over the head with. And Patron Wizard is a weird one. We have a non-zero amount of wizards. Obeka is also a wizard, and sometimes Obeka is just kind of sitting there on the field doing nothing, and this allows us to do some counter magic. I like Patron Wizard. We can make copies of Patron Wizard in the same vein as Spiketail Drake. It also snowballs way harder than the Drake, because if you make copies of Patron Wizard, like if you have 4 Patron Wizards, you can mana tithe 4 spells a turn cycle. It gets nutty. The most restrictive part of Patron Wizard is the triple blue, though. It can be a downside if you have a weak mana base. So, a mana base like this is a weak mana base because we can't cast Patron Wizard. But we also hate it when our opponent's board looks like this. So what do? Oh look, what's this? And now they're gone. Keldon Firebombers is a lovely card that I recommend if you're going either the reanimation route or the sneak attack route. It's a 5 mana 3/3. When it enters the battlefield, every player sacks all of their lands except 3. This is when our lands that tap for multiple amounts of mana come in real handy, because we can just dodge the Firebombers effect, and most of the sneak show and tell effects and reanimation effects are 3 mana. So we're more setting our opponents back to where we want to be, where our deck plays at that 3 to 4 mana spot, ideally to cheat stuff out and recur them. Most of our opponents' decks probably won't play ideally at that same spot. So we're basically rewinding the game a bit just to be able to play. I also like Firebombers a lot more than most other forms of mass land destruction because you can still play the game. It's not a hard lock like something like Armageddon. You can just play it to slow down the game a bit, where something like Armageddon would grind the game to an absolute halt. Run Keldon Firebombers. Good card. But Obeka can also have a fistful of salt too. Theft. People hate having their stuff stolen. Agent of Treachery can steal stuff from the board. Puppeteer Click can steal stuff from the grave, and Zara can even steal stuff from the hand. Absolutely dirty cards. My favorite of these is Puppeteer Click, because it's graveyard hate. That's really it. I just like graveyard hate that synergizes with my deck. It's really fun, and you kill one of their threats, Puppeteer Click, it's yours now. I just like Puppeteer Click. Agent of Treachery is also pretty cool. It gets better the more theft you have, but just Agent of Treachery alone is usually enough to trigger his ETB enough times to get that theft effect. You only need like a Twin Flame and a Heat Shimmer, and then you're drawing 9 cards a turn. That sounds fair and balanced. Here's just some of the creatures I like to run. You can run whatever big stompy creatures you want. This is just what my personal favorites are and what I run in my deck. You can substitute them for whichever you want. Meteor Golem's the odd one out there, but the Omni target can lock boards sometimes. It's that game of chicken your opponents are forced to play, and it's just pretty fun. But it's combo time. What time is it? Combo time. That's right. For infinite turns, you're going to want Final Fortune. You can put this on either Spellbinder, Elite Arcanist, or Isochron Scepter. All of these allow you to cast Final Fortune every turn. With that and Obeka or Sundial of the Infinite, that's infinite turns. But what about a different way? If you have any of our extra turn spells, plus a creature that can reanimate them, plus any of these cards that allow you to make copies every turn, that's infinite turns, baby. What else? More infinite turns? Exalted Flamer of Tzeentch? That's infinite turns. Oops, I'm infinite. Sneak Attack, Dockside, Kiki Jiki. Basically, the tagline of these cards should be, oops, I'm infinite. I actually cut most of the infinites from my list because my list was about going big and stompy, and it always blue-balled me whenever I had a massive army of flying beaters. And then I draw into Twin Flame Dualcaster Mage, and I guess I win. Not that there's anything wrong with the infinites. They're very effective, and I recommend especially most of these if you want to go for an infinite route, just because of how easily they're assembled and how good they just slot into the deck and do what we already want to be doing. And then sometimes, oops, I win. And here's some... That's you. See that? That's you. You done goofed. Here's some lessons about misplays. So we create a bunch of Archons of Cruelty with Mirror March because we got really lucky. We have Obeka on board, and we want to solidify this win, because 5 Archons of Cruelty are going to make us win, almost instantly. So what do? We're going to cast Final Fortune. We just done goofed. Our opponent murders Obeka, and now we have an option. We can either tap Obeka, exiling Final Fortune, and not even getting to attack, or we could just let Obeka die and YOLO it. There's a correct answer here. It's not tapping Obeka, and here I'll show you why. So now, naturally, we tap Obeka, end our turn. This exiles Final Fortune and Murder, but at least we keep our Archons of Cruelty wrong. There they go. Where do they go? You forgot to read your cards. Mirror March exiles at the beginning of the next end step. All of the cards that create temporary tokens exile at the beginning of the next end step. Don't do this. Please, I've lost a game because of this. It was so sad. And then, no time to read. So we have Puppeteer Click, as stated earlier, and we're going to steal our opponent's Dreadmaw. Then Mirror March is going to make our Dreadmaw. So, we end the turn. Normally, both of them would go away. However, let's take it a different way. Puppeteer Click dies on our opponent's turn. We get their Dreadmaw. Mirror March grabs the Dreadmaw, makes us a copy. End of their turn, both of them die. Wrong. Puppeteer Click's effect is at the beginning of your next end step, exile it. This is going to cause you so much headache in Obeka. You have to really know when all of your abilities trigger and which end step, because a lot of them are your next end step, the next end step, and then your extra turn spells are the end step of the extra turn. It's a lot, but I believe in you. You can do it. And so that's why you should play Obeka. And there's only one way to end this video properly, and that is